How did the first Africans to arrive on the shores of India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka survive the new magic of the new lands they came into? What position would their gods have held in India, a land of 1,000,000 gods? What magic would they have used to survive the magical creatures of Pakistan and Sri Lanka? Most of all, how do we use this in creating fantasy worlds for the African diaspora in Southern Asia? That was hundreds of years ago, and yes, they kept some of their African traditional beliefs and magic. Hello friends, today we look at the African fantasy aesthetics of the Afro-Asians in Pakistan, India, and Sri Lanka. In this video, we shall look at the following fantasy aesthetics: environment and architecture, costume and armor, magic systems, and creatures and beings. Whether they landed in Pakistan, India, or Sri Lanka, Afro-Asians adopted the cultures of the people they found in these places. But they did not forget their own cultures. Since they are found mostly in the coastal regions of these Southern Asian nations, the natural environment was not that alien to them because they themselves came from the coastal regions of Africa. The hot and wet climate of the coastal regions of these South Asian nations was a right match for the spices and crops they had grown in Africa. Even the South Asian people found in these new lands were familiar because ancient kingdoms of the Indian subcontinent had been trading with the East African coastal kingdoms for centuries. So, if you are writing about Afro-Asians in a fantasy story based in Asia, then their houses, palaces, and temples should be similar to the architecture of the East African coast, Portugal, and South Asia. In the coastal areas of Bhavnagar district of India, where you find the Afro-Asian community called the Siddi, there are a number of ancient ruins and sites that you can use as inspiration for the world you are creating. One notable site is the Brahma Kund, which is a medieval water tank used by kings. Legend has it that it was built by King Jayasimha Siddharaja of the Chalukya dynasty, who had been cured of a serious skin disease after bathing in its waters. It was probably built with sandstone, while the steps leading to the waters were carved into the stone. Many Afro-Asians arrived on the Indian subcontinent with Portuguese or Arab armies. That means the weapons they used were probably a mix of European and African influences or Arab and African influences. Portuguese invaded Goa and other areas in present-day India in the 16th century. They brought in Africans from the east coast of Africa during those invasions. These Africans may have worn some of the Portuguese war armor, such as steel helmets, mail shirts, and small rounded shields. The weapons they may have wielded include cannons, swivel guns, swords, crossbows, pikes, and more. But the Indians also had their own weapons. When the Portuguese arrived at Goa, they faced the Bijapur Sultanate ruled by Adil Shahi dynasty. The people at Goa wore chainmail, breastplates, and some even wore steel helmets. They wielded battle axes, straight swords, muskets, and shields. All these weapons would be relevant if you are designing an African fantasy narrative based in Asia. So, what magic system do you think would be fitting for an Afro-Asian character? You can borrow some ideas from East African magic systems. That means witch catchers, shape-shifting cats, astrology, witches, and also jinns. Remember that the belief in jinn reached the East African coast from Arabs who traded with the region. But the people the Arabs found in the region already had belief in evil spirits. When you are dealing with African magic systems, you need to remember that conjuring spells and other magical powers depend on your connection to the spiritual world. For example, soothsayers, shamans, and even herbalists rely on divination. Herbalists divine before they provide treatment, despite the fact that they already have extensive knowledge of medicinal herbs. Shamans would also divine before offering any treatments for spiritual therapy situations. So, divination is really an important part that you can include for your Afro-Asian characters. In the region of Bhavnagar, the Africans must have encountered new or familiar magic. For instance, there is a story about King Siddharaj who was cursed with a severe skin disease by Ranakadevi, who was a queen from another region. The king bathed in the waters of Brahmkund and was healed. So you can add curses and magical healing waters to your Afro-Asian magic system. Generally, from what I have seen in the movies and in some religious books, indigenous communities in India practice magic that is connected with their religions. For example, Rama's arrow of last resort was handed to him by Lord Brahma, who is the Hindu god of creation. So, what magic do the Sheedi and the Siddi communities in Pakistan and India still believe in today? A significant number of people in these communities are Muslim, but they still have certain beliefs that connect them to Africa. For example, they still hold ngoma ceremonies where they beat drums and sing call and response songs that are meant to heal people. The ceremony has been intertwined with Sufi Islam and is mostly performed at the shrines of Sufi saints. Ngoma festivals originate from the East African coastal regions of Kenya and Tanzania. The Sheedi of Pakistan have the Sheedi Mela festival, which involves feeding crocodiles in honor of a certain Sufi saint. They believe that the crocodiles cannot harm the faithful followers of the honored Sufi saint. Crocodiles are viewed as sacred creatures in a number of African communities. So, what supernatural creatures did the Africans encounter when they landed on the Indian subcontinent? The supernatural creatures in Indian mythology include vampiric corpse spirits, serpentine-like fertility spirits, sorcerer spirits, and ghosts. They also have sacred animals that look like normal animals, but they're actually spiritual creatures. These include Airavat Hathi, a sacred white elephant that serves the king of the gods. Another creature is Makara, a half-crocodile, half-fish creature that is often depicted as a mount to several gods and goddesses in the Hindu pantheon. Since you are looking specifically at Afro-Indians, it also makes sense to include African supernatural creatures, especially from the coast of East Africa. You can include the bat-like succubus called Popobawa. You can also include the shape-shifting spirits that disguise themselves as stray cats, or even the mermaids that only emerge from the sea at night. And there you have it. The fantasy aesthetics of the Siddi or the Sheedi give you the necessary information you need if your fantasy world is mostly Asian, but you want to include African characters in it. I hope you loved the video. In the next video, we will look at the fantasy aesthetics of the African diaspora in Western Asia or the Middle East. If you want to support my channel, you can tip me on Ko-fi or join my Patreon. Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment because it will help with the YouTube algorithm. Goodbye and good luck.